Hey, and we're live. I'm Kurt,
And this is D. Wyatt.
and this is the MFGCast live edition. Yeah, I just said that we're live. Why did I repeat myself? God, I need to get better at this. I'm gonna
You're a
drink on
consummate
camera too.
professional.
This is this isn't water. This is straight vodka.
Yeah.
We're here. We're here to focus on games. This is something we kind of like to do every once in a while, and this time we're going to be focusing on Aeon's End by Indie Boards and Cards. I always want to say cards and boards. I don't know why, but I always want to do that. I don't understand.
That'll be your rival company that you open up.
That's right. Yeah. It's different, guys. It's different.
Kind of like when you're in some of the small towns and there's 11 7 delis.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I know what you're doing. You fool nobody.
Yeah, you're not so sneaky. How dare you? So we're going to be talking about this unique deck building game, and kind of what we like about it. We're not only going to talk about the base game, we're going to be talking about the standalone expansions, and we're going to be talking about Aeon's End Legacy 2, and just talking a little bit about it. We won't spoil Legacy too much. We'll probably just talk. Dan will actually talk a few things about it because he's the one that's played that. I've only played the base game, but I love it so much, and Dan loves the other stuff so much that we decided we'd come on together and talk about why we love this series of games so much.
Now I have a question with the Legacy. Does it all ends in tears? Does that count as a spoiler?
Oh, sure. that was pretty much our mine and Mike's last game on the base game. It was just like, it was satisfying that it was still a weirdly satisfying that we lost, but still it was like so close that we're like, why couldn't we have just won this game? We tried every little thing and we're like, oh, maybe we can do this little cheat and we can win. And it's like, no, we just straight up lost.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, you play the game pretty quickly, and then in that last turn when it's over, you're like, what? All right, let me actually back this up for a minute. What if I take no? Okay. All right, well, what about these cards? No. And it's like you're just trying to find like that legal loophole. Like, no, there's something I can do to still win, right? And the answer is no, there's not.
Yeah, there's nothing left but the crying, as referred to before. So what is Aeon's End? It's a co-op deck building game, and the story is that the world is basically ended. Pretty much. It's been destroyed by all of these nameless monsters, even though they have some names. And everyone is taking refuge in this place called Gravehold, the one last city that's left. And you are basically playing mages that are trying to help protect this last city. And even though these nameless monsters are coming through these breaches, you actually can harness the power of the breaches to fight back. And I like that. And also what I like about it too is it's kind of got like this fantasy setting and stuff like that. But it's like, you know what, fighter, who cares? Get out of here. Bard, you know what? Go sing a song somewhere else. We don't care. This is all about the mages. This is what they're going to be the ones that are doing the fighting for us.
And the one thing I noticed in this game is these mages love fire. Good Lord.
Nice. Not so much ice, just a lot of fire, huh?
Yeah, it's like half the art is flames. It's like there's never like, like stone punch or, like tornadoes or anything. It's like flaming fist, flaming kick, flaming punch, flaming wall, flame siphon, flame pyre. It's like, good Lord. They got to make one mage. They got to do a special promotion where it's like Seth Rollins. And his sweeper ability is just burn it down, remove every card in play or something like that.
Yeah. Or you could have Stone Cold, because then it would be cold and it would be ice instead of fire.
They can finally have, oh my God, I want this expansion so bad. I'll just use the flip side of my Legacy guys and just put my own art and make my own cards. All right. So to go like a little more with what you're saying, like, a deck building game where you're using spells and fighting enemies. How original, right? And, a lot of people would be like, I think I heard of that game before, but it's more than just that. Like a way that I like to describe this game, it's basically Sentinels of the Multiverse Mage Edition, because your villains, or like in this, like you said, the named nameless, they actually have their own style and their own unique cards that gets added to a main Nemesis deck. So like in Sentinels of the Multiverse, every bad guy has his own deck. It's like when you're fighting Baron Blade, there's 100 machines. When you're fighting Citizen Dawn, there's like, all the different like citizen characters running around. But in Aeon's End, there's just the bad stuff. And these are all things because of the breaches, like power surges and, like damaging attacks and like just basic minions pouring out of these breaches, attacking Gravehold and its people. And then there's also the cards unique to this nameless. And those are always more horrifying than your base like base run of the mill stuff where it's like one. And the other thing is what makes all these villains unique too is this unleash power that they have. So like in Sentinels and stuff like that, it's just like, I'm the bad guy and I'm doing my thing. In this game, every time you see Unleash, you're like, no. Because it's not even that it's not good. It's always really bad.
Yeah.
Like one enemy, it's like this giant tremor worm that every time it unleashes, it's like helping to bury Gravehold. So the unleash effect is always like, well, you can get rid of one of these tokens or suffer this. But if there's no tokens left, Gravehold just dies no matter how many hit points it has. So you're like, oh, all right. Because I know in the beginning, you're like, oh, why would I want to take 3 damage? And you're like, that's why I would want to take 3 damage. Gotcha. Yeah. But I do like that. And then one other thing that makes this deck builder very different is it really rewards you for playing wisely and paying attention, because it is one of the only deck builders where you do not shuffle your deck. When you are done, you just flip it, take your entire discard pile, slam it back, face down, and then that's your deck. So the order of when and how you play things definitely plays into this game, which is kind of, again, pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I like that concept because it turns it on its head. And, we're so ingrained with having to reshuffle our discard piles and stuff like that, that like every time we play this game, like I have to tell Mike, stop shuffling your cards. That's not how we play this. You have to, just flip them over. However you discarded them, that's how you put them, get them ready for your play deck and stuff like that. And, I like that, you kind of have to keep that in mind. It's almost a mathematical thing, but also there's other things that can affect it too. So say like, you use all these cards and you're like, okay, well, I've got these 2 gems that when they're placed side by side, they'll give me another Aether. And Aether is basically your payment to buy other spells and stuff like that.
Mage bucks.
Yeah, there you go. Oh man, that's what I want to call it when I make my own game, mage bucks. And, so you have to like, try to figure out a way to like, okay, I want to have these together and I want to do this. Well, say, you have, let's see, what is it? Is it 5? Is it 4 cards in your hand?
5 cards in your hand.
5 cards in your hand. Okay. I don't know why I guess 4 because I had 5 in my head. And so you have these 5 cards in your hand, and when you're playing them and you're discarding them, you could be like, okay, well then, eventually when I flip it over, I can have these 5 cards. Well, say somebody else, plays a card in your prepped area and stuff like that. So you've got these open breaches, and what they do is once you have a spell in your open breach, you can play that at any time that you want during your turn. But there's other times where other players can actually play, depending on certain spells and stuff like that, they can play one of your spells on your breach and screw your whole order up. So you could be like, okay, well, I had this, but now I'm putting this on top of this other thing, and it's just kind of messing it up too. So you have to kind of think of that. And this game, what I think this game does really well is it almost really forces you to be a true co-op community instead of just having the alpha gamer that's like, okay, you're going to do this. Okay, you're going to do that. We're going to flip this and do that. It's like you all have to kind of work together to make this game work right.
And one thing that I like is there's a lot of cards that don't necessarily benefit you, but an ally.
Mm-hmm.
It's like do this effect and an ally gets, can prep a spell. Do this and an ally can draw a card. I like that effect a lot because instead of one person just boosting themselves up, where it's like I'm the Lord of Death and I'm going to get all the best spells and I'm going to cast all, I'm going to do tons of damage. You're actually like helping each other, almost forced to help each other, but ultimately makes it so much better.
Yeah.
Like it feels great. Like take for example in the legacy, there's like one of the artifact cards is like you somebody can advance their breach, like they focus their breach, and they can prep a spell when you use this. So it lets one of your allies actually prep a spell out of sequence. You know? So it's like, great, like, oh, do you have any spells in your hand? No. And then when they're done and you get to go, you can be like, all right, you got a spell now? Like, yeah, but I can't do anything with it. Or can you? You know, and which is awesome. And actually, that's one other thing. Now, you were saying about how it took you a little while to get used to not shuffling your deck and how you have to constantly tell Mike, no, not yet.
Yep.
Here's one thing we didn't mention either, and that makes this game stand out a lot. How many times did you just start going when Mike was done instead of flipping over the next card of the initiative deck?
You know what's funny is I don't think we ever had that, actually. I don't think we've ever had that problem.
Really? Me and Kim, every time we start, if it's one of us that starts, the next person will automatically start going, and we're like, no, wait, not my turn, not my turn. Flip over the card. Because this is a deck builder where, you know, it's not player A, player B, player C, enemy.
Yeah.
There's actually an initiative deck that gets randomized every time you go through that initiative deck. So the game can start with the enemy going twice. Or it might be like, you're going twice, then me, then the bad guy, then me, then the bad guy.
Yep.
And what's cool is when you play 3 players, each player gets 1 turn, and then there's a wild card where you guys can decide who goes next. You know, and then 4 players, everyone's getting 1. But one thing that I love, and I don't know if this was unique to 2nd edition, but the card will say like player 1, player 2. And we, like, say me and you are player 1 and 2, we would decide, all right, do you want to go first, or should I? And then like when player 3 and 4 comes out, like Tracy and Kim can be like, all right, I'll go first, you take the next one. Is that cool? Mm-hmm. So again, like you were saying, that teamwork, that encouraged dialogue between players is fantastic.
Yeah, and I like that. You know, with these cards, you never know, when your turn's gonna come up until you flip that card. And a lot of times it's like, it's got a lot of good drama to it too. You know, it could be like, you get to the turn where it's like, okay, we're down to the end. And this kind of happened with this last game that me and Mike played. Like, if we would have had one more turn before we had the nemesis, which we had twice in a row at the end, then we would have won. But of course, that's not the way it worked. And so when we went back to it, we're like, Mike's like, I got a thing where I can go back and we can look at the card. And he's like, wait a minute, that's the end of the order. So we'd have to shuffle them. And he's like, it just would go past it. It wouldn't matter, that kind of thing. There's a lot of cool things in this game that just really, make it very, the co-op very succinct, but also, there's a lot going on here that you can do. There's a lot of different avenues, and it makes it exciting. Like, one of the things that I like is that when you have these breaches, not all of them are open. You'll have some that are open, some that are not. Some you'll just have one, and you have to do a focus. So you have to pay the Aether, which is on, so you can either flat out open it, pay a certain amount and flat out open it, or you can focus it and then just turn it 90 degrees or whatever.
Yeah, until it finally becomes super cheap to open.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing about it too is that when you put a spell on a closed breach, you have to use that spell right away. But if it's on an open breach, you can use it at any time. So you can just save it for whenever you want. You can wait for that other person to use it. And then there's, sometimes there's other cards where it's like, use it again. Or there's special abilities and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of different things about this game that just really set it apart from a lot of things.
Yeah. And one thing is, like, in some of the other expansions, they started adding spells that, like, while it's prepped, give you other things. Like, there's a spell that'll give you ether while it's prepped. So you might be like, I don't want to cast this spell yet. Like, I'm going to hold on to it for one more turn if that's cool. Mm-hmm. Like, there's another spell that gives you like one of my favorites is when you cast it, it's called like charging blow or whatever. And in a shocking twist, it's somebody with like fire on their fist, on the ground. But it's like, it does 3 damage, but if you have 3 charge counters or more, gain a charge counter. So it's kind of like, I only got 2, and I mean, the guy still has 74 hit points left. It doesn't really matter if I hit him for 3 yet, so I'm just going to wait. And then, like, next turn, okay, like, like at that turn, you're like, all right, I'm gonna spend 2 more, ether, get another charge counter, and then now when I use this spell, it's gonna be even better for me.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about, we'll talk some more about other things and stuff like that, but I like to talk about like, different like strategies that you have for this game. So, the win condition for you is to beat this nemesis. Okay. But you also have these other minions and other, different events and stuff like that happen. But there's 2 ways for you to lose it. There's either both of you die, or all of you die, sorry, or Gravehold is basically destroyed. Yeah. And then what do you start out with, like 30 points? For Gravehold. So it's like, there's those 2 avenues. So it's like, do you have the strategy of, you know what, Gravehold, that can take some damage. I want to sit back and, just hammer my way out. And, if a few random, people get slain, whatever, that's war, or do you do that thing where it's like in this game, even if you're technically slain, if not everybody is out of the game, you're still technically in and you can help. So, is it something where, you go and you think, okay, well, I'll play it one time, this way one time, and I'll play it this way another time. Is it dependent upon the nemesis and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, so the thing is, now one of the things that's interesting is like when you said that you can get knocked out but still play. The downside of that is whenever a knocked out player would suffer damage, Gravehold instead takes twice that much damage. So when it's something like all players take 3, you're like, ugh, that's not good.
Yeah, no kidding.
But there's also one other mode that's like true solo mode, where you basically are Gravehold's life, and it's like you don't have your 10 hit points or whatever, but so you have this like giant pool of hit points because you're technically the town. The downside to that game mode is you only have your 2 player cards versus the 2 nemesis cards. So it's like an ultra efficiency game at that point because you don't have time to filter out cards really. Like you got to be on A game if you want to play true solo. But yeah, I mean, it's like I really enjoy the fact that so many times you have to make these critical decisions, and like you said, it's the first round or 2, you're like, Gravehold's got 30, or I got 10, it's no big deal. And then like once you start hitting those tier and like the tier 2 enemies, you're kind of like, this isn't good. Like we're gonna be taking 5 damage per turn. Like I got 6 and you got 4. I don't want to split this up. Like Gravehold has to take the hits. And then you look over and you're like, oh my God, Gravehold is at 12. But it's great, though. It's that tension. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was just going to say is what plays well in this game. It's like, if you think about it, most of these bad guys have a starting hit points of like 60 to 70. I don't know about the expansion or whatever, or even legacy for that matter. But like they have a decent amount of damage that they need to take before they're gone. Gravehold 30, you think like, oh, it's pretty good, but that once you get into the tier 2 and the tier 3, then things just start going south. And if you and plus if you think about it with your players, like 10 hit points, I mean, think about like playing D&D. 10 hit points is not going to last you very long. So it really puts that tension together. Like you got to get this done now or something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, and it's like, so, and we mentioned like the base deck builder parts. Like this is a game where it's not like a trench buy; it's a fixed market buy. There's always like 9 cards that are available for purchase, so it's not like oh, all these cards suck. Like sometimes when you're playing Ascension or something, like, well, there's nothing I can buy, so whatever. Like this game doesn't have that, but whatever your base market is really is a big influence on how you're going to play that game too. Because if you have no cards that heal players, those 10 hit points are really damn important now. It's like, I lost 3 of something I can never get back. It has to be worth it, And it's like, because you might have a card that heals Gravehold, or you might have a card that heals like a player. But if you have like, say your market is like 2 or 3 cards that heal, yeah, that's awesome. But now that means 3 of your 6 cards are not damaging. And on top of that, 3 of your 6 cards are gems, which only buy you stuff, so they're not damaging. So again, like that, your market influences playstyle plus your mage's abilities, which we didn't even get into, and there's so many, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on the characters. The characters themselves are awesome. Like they all, on the board, it actually tells you, what your starting hand, what your starting deck, and what your starting hand is. So it actually, tells you different things. It's got your special ability there. And then, during the game, you actually can use 2 Aether to gain charges. And once you fill up your charge sheet down at the bottom there, you can use that special ability. And, depending on the player, it does well versus, some, it does well versus, some people. And during the other ones, maybe, it does, decent, but, sometimes it just kind of depends upon the situation.
So now, based on you just held up the character Aeon. Since his power is called Black Mirror, I'm assuming that whenever you use the 4 charge counters, it's that his cell phone starts like whispering messages to him or something about an alternate timeline or some jazz.
Exactly. it goes right into his soulless eyeballs, if you can see that.
So, and like also at the top of the card, it tells you like how many breaches you have, what positions they start in. So like some mages will actually start being able to cast 2 spells in the beginning of the game. Other mages might only get 3 breaches in total. One thing that I thought was really interesting is one of the mages in War Eternal, and it's funny because I'm used to like the planeswalkers of Magic, so we just call those sweeper abilities. So like her sweeper is she actually will like destroy another's player breach and replace it with like an empowered breach that makes it every spell cast from it is +2 damage.
Nice.
So it's like she's just like amping the hell out of the energies around her and everything, which is an awesome idea.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's an encouragement for you to quick focus up faster. So when I use my sweeper, I can like really, have you pouring on the damage, which again, that co-op and those mage styles. I think it's Zaxos or something. Like his ability is you can rearrange the turn order deck.
Yep, that's the one I had for the last game, and unfortunately, I did not use that ability, which sucks because I was so concentrated on other things that I didn't. So,
yeah, it's like only 2 ether for a charge card doesn't sound like a lot until you need to buy a spell. And then it's like, okay,
yeah, that is true.
So one of the things is like now, like, there, like I said, there's so much of this. There's all the different nemesis. There's all the different mages. There's tons of different spells. We threw up on Facebook, like, asking people if they had like favorites. And by the way, Aeon seems to be the favorite of a lot of people, which I get a kick out of.
And I have to actually apologize because for both of us, just because she may be genderless. She may be not man or woman. He or she has very feminine features too. So it may be, who knows how he or she identifies, but still pretty cool.
We will call it the mageless.
Nice. There you go.
The nemesis of the nameless.
Yeah.
But so like, say for example, like like I saw a lot of people because recently there was a Kickstarter, and if you wanted to be insane and go, here's all of the monies, you could like get every single damn thing that's been out for Aeon's End, like in this one giant Kickstarter pledge. I've been bleeding it in. Like, now here's the thing, like most of the time, like take for example, you played some Pandemic Legacy. Pandemic Legacy is usually the reward of, hey, you really like Pandemic, right? Here's Pandemic Legacy. Same thing as Betrayal at House on the Hill. It's like, oh, do you really enjoy this game? What about this campaign style? Here you go, Betrayal Legacy. Aeon's End is one of the few games where I think the Legacy is the best place to start. And here's why. Like, there's a few different mechanics in the game, right? Like we were mentioning the charge counters and these sweeper abilities and all these other things. In the Legacy version, and I don't consider this a spoiler, that in Legacy games things change, but sometimes people, if you want to know nothing about the Legacy, you might want to hit mute for like 2 minutes. But in this game, the mages don't start with charge counters. That gets introduced during game. So you're going to play a game or two just playing and like just getting used to the buy in the market. And all the spells are like super simple, like hit for 2 points of damage, like, you know, focus a breach, you know, gain a gem. Simple, very simple effects. You know, cards that in your base game you would probably never use because it's like, why would I spend 3 to buy a spell that does 2 damage when I can spend 3 to buy a spell that does 2 damage and can focus a breach, or it does 2 damage and an additional damage if I have 2 other spells, whatever. But those spells are just to show you, you buy these and they do damage. Every game, new spells and relics and art and gems are going to be introduced, and you can swap out 2 buy piles from the market. So you're changing your market every game. Every time you lose, they tell you swap out 2 more cards. Like, you know, try again, swap out 2 more cards. Again, changing up your market. Like, oh, maybe this spell is better than we thought it was. Maybe this thing is nicer than we thought it was. And then other mechanics that are introduced, like in Aeon's Ends, like when you play the normal game, things like silence or surge counters or anything else, that all gets added as time goes on. So it's a legacy game that'll help you learn the game from a starting at 0 sum, and you're actually making your own mage. And like most of the powers are very similar to all the other mages out there. But like, you know, you might be looking at this card and you're like, oh my God, like I wish Zaxxas is, you know, I don't like that starting hand. I wish I did start with an extra like fire spell or something. Or you play this other mage and you're like, oh man, like I wish the breaches worked a little better. Like I wish I started with a little more focus. You actually make that now. So you can be like, I like Zaxxas' sweeper. I'm going to take that. I like this person's opening power. I'm going to take that. And I'm going to also take this. Like, so you're basically like buffet picking, you know, your mage. Like there's nothing super groundbreaking in the powers, but you're customizing it. So that's also, again, really cool and fun, you know?
Yeah, it makes me think of like if you're doing a tutorial for like a video game, it's like,
Exactly.
okay, this is how your fighting goes. Okay, this is how your defending goes. Okay, this is how your mage goes, or your spells or whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, we've introduced everything for you, so now make your person, you know?
And here's the other thing for the legacy game, and this is why I'm a huge advocate of this is a fantastic place to start. The destruction process. Now, like the recharge pack is a little high, and I get why, because you have to replace everything. It's like, here's all the cards that you changed. Here's like, you know, like the only your market cards and a lot of other stuff, whatever that, you know, you can play from game to game. But it's like all the mage cards, all the insight things, all the ability cards. Like there's a lot of stuff that would have to be replaced with that recharge pack. And again, they put out a recharge pack. You remember when we were talking about Charterstone, we're like, why doesn't every legacy game do this? Yeah. So I'm glad that they did. But at the end of this game, you're going to have 7 nameless that you can just play in any Aeon's End game. And all of your market cards you can use in any Aeon's End game as well. So unlike, you know, like when you're kind of done like Pandemic Legacy or certain other legacy games, it's kind of like, well, that's the thing, and I guess that's done. But this game, about 80% of it can be used for any other Aeon's End. Or if you wanted to, you can just be like, man, I want to use our mages to fight somebody new. Buy one of those expansions for like $20 or less on Amazon. Like, okay, here's 2 new nameless and a few new spells. Have fun. Like, you don't, this is not a legacy game that when you're done gets put on the shelf and you're like, we're going to try that again someday. And dust settles. And then you're like, that's taking up space. You might have to meet the trash can soon. This actually has purpose to stay, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I will even, excuse me, I will even throw in there that the thing that I like about the base game is that, you know, it has your regular instructions, but it actually comes with a starter sheet. So it basically is like, okay,
yes,
playing your first game. Hey, this is what you need to do to play. It doesn't get overly thematic. It doesn't get overly bogged down in instructions. It says, this is what you need to do. Use these cards. The other cards, you know what? Don't even bother opening them. We have everything back and ready to go for you.
I love that it says, stop, open pack A. That's all you need. Take it easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like calm down, gamer. You'll be fine.
Yeah, you're looking at all those mages. Pick one of these 4. It's all right. Just relax.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've done that. I've done that in different games where it's like, you know, they're like, oh, here, start with this, and you're like, no, I don't want to. I'm gonna start with this, and it's like, and then I can't even remember what game it was, but then I played it, and think it might have been Dice Throne or something like that. And they're like, this is the hardest one to use right away, so don't use it right away. And I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder I got my ass handed to me during that game. So
you're like, I'm a gamer, I know what I'm doing. It's like, why am I losing so badly? Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I never
exactly.
played this one before. Now, like what I was saying before, like the whole like, you know, the mark, like how that legacy game spans out though. What's really cool is you know, like in between our legacy games, I actually used my mage in a solo against one of the nameless from like another Aeon's End game. You know, just because I was like, I want to use my mage and like mess around a little bit.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, playing it solo, this is one of the few games that I actually really enjoy solo. And oh my lord, did I get stumped? It was hard. It was that, and also one thing I do love is like this is one of the few games that when you lose really bad, it doesn't leave you with a like, oh, the hell with this. It's kind of like the, all right, yeah, this guy wins this time. Let's do our rematch. Like I want to take him now. Like I think I know what we were doing wrong. In our last game in the legacy, me and Kim, the enemy started at 70, and at the end of the game, he had 53 left when we died. That's not great.
Oh no, that's not. Excuse me, that's not good at all.
No, it was not great. And I don't know what's worse, that he had like if he was down to 4 or 53, like because both suck.
Yeah. Oh geez. Yeah, I know. Believe me, it's same with that last game. 2 points. 2 points we could have won against. Let's see. I love the name, but I always forget it. Prince of Gluttons. I love that name. I think like that's like the best name ever.
Oh, that looks fun.
Oh yeah, he is amazing.
What's his horrific unleash ability?
For 1 to 2 players, this is one where it basically mills the supply piles. And once the supply piles are gone, then you are dead, basically.
It's a new lose condition?
It's an extra lose condition. Yep.
That's awesome.
And yeah, exactly. So for 1 to 2 players, you devour 3 cards from the least expensive supply pile. So that goes really quick. And then for 3 players, it's 2, but still, that's still pretty harsh. Also, if you are dumb like me and with these bad guys, you can actually do increased difficulty, which I thought was just meant extra setup.
Oh, why would you?
Yeah, exactly, right? And so it says place the top card of each gem supply pile, starting with the most expensive, face up in the pile next to the mat. This is his devoured pile. So we started with 3 less cards. So maybe if I would have not used that, probably would have won. So
good lord, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the best.
Yeah, I was. You're very proud of yourself. Now one of the things. So just out of curiosity, like the art in the game, how do you dig it?
Oh, I love it. It's just every little thing about it is just it screams fantasy, but it looks like nothing I've ever seen before either. It's weird because it looks like fantasy art, but it also has it almost has like a old school D&D feel where like the art just wasn't like the art was good, but it's not like art is today where it's like so far. It's got I don't know. To me, it's got like an edge to it almost. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but it's got a different edge to it, which I really enjoy. Yeah,
it's like one thing I enjoy is like I like seeing all the mages in the actual spell cards. Like it makes it have that little extra vibe of they're really casting these things.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I really enjoy is one of the latest expansions is Buried Secrets, and it started featuring the art of the mages from the Legacy game. Nice. So I'm like, oh, cool. They're actually like part of the real universe now. The Nameless, the one thing that I was again, going back to like a little bit of those magic roots, I feel like a lot of the Nameless almost look like they could be Eldrazi.
Yeah, totally.
It's like here's some hideous abomination creature that lurks beneath like old dreams. Like, yeah, it sounds great. Now, one thing you were talking about, how they don't bog you down with like too much lore and like so much like theme and everything. What I do like is there's actually a lot of story, almost like magic cards, where like the cards themselves have a little story to them, and it shows in some of their expansions. Because like so far I think there's tentatively 6 expansions out and 3 different core boxes. There's like you can get Aeon's End, you can get Aeon's End War Eternal, and then Legacy, and there's another main box game, I believe it's the New Age, that should be coming out this year. That was the heart of the Kickstarter. In addition, there's like multiple small box expansions that have like a couple of new mages, like usually 2 new nameless, and like some more spell cards, of course. And just like as an example of like one of these expansions, there's one called The Void, and what I think is awesome is you're actually fighting a fallen brethren. Like it's a nemesis that actually focuses breaches and fights you in a totally different way than all the other nameless. Which again sounds awesome. Like I think these ideas are so cool. And I mean, like, I believe you may be on mute, good sir.
Darn it.
There we go.
I pushed the button. It didn't work. God darn it. Okay. So I love the flavor text on these too. It's like so tiny. You need like glasses. Like I have good eyesight and I could read it, but like that's hard. It's still hard for me to read it. But I love, it's just so tiny, but they, add a lot of, flavor to it, which is cool. Like this one, it's one of the unleash attacks from the Carapace Queen. It says, "The sound of things skittering around the cave walls is loud enough to drown our screams." And then this one is, yeah, no kidding, right? And this is Chaos Arc Spell. And it says, "Even the blind can see what little is left of our world." I love how dramatic it is.
Yeah, all right. I mean, like, good Lord. That is awesome, though, man. Yeah, and it's like I said, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there is a ton of deck builders out there, and it's very easy for for games of like this nature to be like written off like, oh, it's just another deck builder, like what's the big deal and stuff like that. But I gotta say, this thing really impressed me. Believe it or not, I know it's been out for a couple of years, like to the point where we even got a second edition. I actually got turned onto it during Dreamation. Nice. It was super popular this year. Like I saw it at so many tables, and I was just like, this looks very awesome and like something I would probably really, really enjoy. And one of the players at the con, I think her name was Consetta. She said, she's like, look, she's like, oh, you don't own anything? I'm like, no, not yet. And she's like, buy the Legacy and start from there. I was like, all right. And sure enough, like 3 days later, me and Kim are playing. I'm like, this is awesome,
Yeah. I like games like that, and I think we've talked about this about other games that we really enjoyed too. It's not from my perspective, but it's from other players' perspectives, because me and Mike have played this a few times, and he actually got this for me for Christmas. That's how we came into it. But like I've heard of it. And I've heard, how it kind of, how the mechanism kind of worked. And I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, but I just never got around to getting it, And the thing I like about playing games like this is when we were done playing the first game, like I could see the look on Mike's face, like, okay, I really like that. That was fun. There's a lot of games where you get to the end and you're like, okay, let's talk about, why we won or who won or didn't win and blah, 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 depending upon what you're playing, But I could tell like he was just like, wow, I'm really glad I got this for you. I'm glad we're able to play this, And even this last game that we played, even though we lost by 2, Mike's like, oh, it just sucks that we lost, but he's like, God, that was really fun. I'm glad, that went that way, even though we should have won,
Yeah, and like I said, there's so much to this game that it's, one thing with a lot of deck builders is it is very easy. Like, you play it a couple times and you're like, oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. And then, kind of goes on the shelf and you're like, oh yeah, we'll play that again soon. I find this one, like, this is always something where if somebody's like, oh, do you want to try it? I'm like, yeah. Let's do it. I'm always happy to break it out, which is fantastic because, when you have like a bazillion games or there's always something new coming out, it's nice having a staple that you know the game, it has variability, and there's the reason to go back. You know, it's like you still want to settle that score with that nameless that took you out that last time, or that it's like, damn, you know, like this spell cost 8 to buy or like 9 to buy. This is crazy. But I really want to put it in for one game. I want to see if this thing is worth the cost. All right, let's play it. I just want this to be one of the spells in the buy row, you know, which is great. I love that vibe that this game gives you.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so you know, I think that's why we basically wanted to come on and talk to you guys about about this game, because it's one of those games that you just, even if you've heard, you may not have played, because it feels like, you know, this is a game that kind of broke that deck builder, and, you know, a lot of people are talking about it, but that doesn't mean that everyone's been playing it. So I thought, you know, actually Dan bugged me about it. He's like, we really need to talk about this. And
because it's so good.
Yeah, exactly. After playing it a few times, I definitely agree. So it was nice to come on here and talk and try to hopefully talk you into wanting to play it or play it more if you have already.
Yeah, I figure if we're going to have the motto of talking about the games that you should be playing, this is definitely, I said, as far as Legacy goes, it might be on tier with Pandemic Legacy Season 2 in my book. Nice. You know, as far as deck builder goes, I would say it's like one of the top. Like, it's a genre that's been around for a while, but they added enough unique aspects and ideas to it to make it really interesting and involving. And just on top of that, like, you know, like you said, it's a co-op game that lets you intentionally avoid quarterbacking very easily.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, is there something about this game that you have questions about? Is there something that you've played that you're like, you really, really want to tell us about? Leave a comment, like the video, please subscribe to our channel. That'd be great. But until next time, I'm Kurt.
And this is DY, Master of the Breaches.
Wasn't expecting that. And this was the MFGCast. Thanks for watching.